Yeah.
Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm having one of my childhood friends, Saptarshi Majumdar, and one of the most brilliant guy ever on the planet Earth I have ever met. And let that be any kind of Olympiad medal, KBPY, NTAC. None of them have been left out by my friend, a Stanford graduate, and I'm heading over to him. Please, Saptarshi, introduce yourself onto my channel.
Hi, I'm Saptarshi Majumdar. As I was saying previously, I graduated from Stanford in 10 quarters. I was kicked out twice, and like for the last, I mean, I took my sophomore year. I was like I was taking like about th- uh, 4 or 5 classes per quarter, on top of which I was working full time for this company called Agora. Literally Agora. For me it was like a very funny thing because it was a company that sold concert tickets. Um, and it was a competitor to, like, let's say StubHub, Vivid Seats, Viagogo. Um, and I basically was like a point person who did like everything: customer service, uh, then acquiring new customers, customer acquisition cost. I did every aspect of the job. I became well versed in the ticketing industry, and that way I became well versed in what markets, like, sold better where. So for instance, I found out that the LA slash San Francisco Bay Area markets slash Austin, all these tech heavy com- like markets, they would be uh, very dependent on, like, let's say electronic music. They'll be very heavy on electronic music, and I feel like that's partially because of the fact that uh, like most of these places are like dominated by introverts. And electronic music is computer music. You are making things on a digital audio workstation, uh, and yeah, that's like how you're playing out live. So yeah, I had like quite a great time, quite at the company, but also like it was like very scumbaggy, like watching a guy who was kicked out of okay, so one of the founders was kicked out of what's it called, College of Charleston. And he was like this old money Jewish guy from like Chicago. So yeah, it was like this very sleazy environment, and I'm just like trying to navigate all the demands there while trying to navigate the demands of coursework and just surviving, man. One like so I worked there from let's see, the summer of 2018, no, summer of 2017 to the summer, like March of 2020. So almost 2 years, 2.5 years. And I basically learned everything about the ins and outs of the ticketing market. When COVID hit, what ended up happening was like me and this other kid from China, we were let go, and the company was switched onto a rebrand. Whereas I then had to decide, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to go back to India, or am I going to just try and slog it out here? I decided that I am going to slog it out there, and I signed up on Uber Eats, DoorDash, Postmates, all as a uh, delivery driver. So I, during the pandemic, I did 9,000 deliveries on the wheelchair. And yeah, it was my electric wheelchair. So and like I was saying, August 5, peak of COVID. As I was about to cross the street, this Japanese lady named Hanako Tanaka hits me head on. My leg splits open. I almost have this die. I have this near death experience, which uh, and led to like a 6 hour surgery. Uh, and That's what caused me to, like, now I still have these like after effects, PTSD. And yeah, I survived, man. But somehow, you know after surviving till, like, let's say, April of 2020, 2021, COVID went through, finally things are turning back to learn. I basically switched my focus back to starting this ticketing company back again, uh, but I'm doing this time, I'm doing it on my own, and I'm using my own personal savings, of which I don't have a lot because I'm a guy in a wheelchair, but I still get this like renewed force of life because I survived, and I'm still able to go out to shows, and I'm still so grateful that I am in this position of privilege in America where, like, being in a wheelchair, I am able to enjoy my life, and I'm able to direct people to uh, the path of house and techno music, and I start writing as like this outlet of creative outlet of mine, about how I used to feel about the going to shows, so for instance, I don't know, do you want to see an example for like how I equate like electronic music?
But yeah, before that, I would like to uncover your journey that you started off
Yeah,
somewhere from the school life at Delhi DPS,
yeah,
is
yeah.
with Nagar, and then you made it to Stanford. So that's an inspiration for
Hmm.
Indian students and aspirants. So I just want
Yeah.
to shortly describe the process, what inspired you, and how what the overall process looks like.
Well, like going back to again one of those, like going to a lot of Olympiad camps. Like I went to so many NSO camps, NTSC camp, KVPY camp, meeting other speakers from, you know, like for instance, when I was at KVPI camp, I met this Nobel Prize winner, George Bednors, uh, and talking to them about facilities that exist outside of America, you know, and realizing that my life would be better, much better outside of America, And again, like I was saying, I was a guy who was a huge movies guy, so I'd watched Dead Poet Society, I'd watched Goodwill Hunting, So I decided that, what, with 4 or 5 months to go before fall, the deadline of class 12, right? I decided I'm going to apply to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford. I take the ACT, score 33 out of 36 on the ACT, is it 32 or 33, 800 out of 800 on my physics, chemistry, math level 2. Um, and then basically I apply to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford. I only get rejected from Harvard, Uh,
Okay, so some
yeah.
aspirants needs to give for the sake of getting the admissions.
Yeah. I personally recommend ACT over SAT. I mean, actually, I don't think if that's a good advice because the SAT, they removed a section, but when I was studying for it, the SAT had like a vocabulary section where you had to know so many synonyms. Now I'm not a native English speaker. For me, logic makes more sense. Logic puzzles make more sense, and I operate from logic. So I took the ACT, and that's why on that exam I scored 33 out of 36. Uh, so yeah, I mean, and then after that I had to write essays, for which I got feedback from existing students uh, at Stanford, at MIT, at everywhere, and yeah, that's like how I ended up applying and ended up getting in.
Also, you were suggesting that you went on two scholarships. One was Ambani scholarship, another was something else. So, what was
Yes.
and how did you get that?
I wrote those essays, and like as I was mentioning that, like, like something like Stanford is not need blind for international students. So you apply, if you get in, you send them your father's tax returns. Then based on that, they will decide what kind of package is right for you. Uh, yeah. So that's how I ended up getting around that thing.
Great to know this, by the way. One of the major aspirations, what I see in terms of you, that how somebody can get into Ivy League at the under.
Yeah. Basically, like it's like, okay. So I mean, I remember, as far as I remember, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and MIT. Those are need blind for international students. So if you're an undergrad, you apply. It doesn't affect your chance of getting in. Whereas
Yeah,
Stanford, if you do, your chances goes down like a lot. Like I said, I was the poorest village idiot at Stanford, and like 11 or 12 kids, and they. Uh, Those people had like, I don't know, millions and billions of dollars, like, I mean, I remember like some of those people came from like insane backgrounds, and I was like just trying to survive, uh,
Got it. And okay,
yeah.
fine. So that's the thing. How would you describe that education at Stanford, the entire 4 years? Also, hailing from a PCM background, why did you choose economics?
Well, because I mean, I wanted to. I mean, money made more sense to me. I've always been kind of a guy who's like math makes more sense to me. Uh, I've always wanted to live in. I mean, one of the biggest things was that I wanted to live in New York. You know, I wanted to live in New York after college, because I like growing up. One of my biggest passions was reading, uh, like Humans of New York, and like learning how people in New York lived, and so I studied economics, hoping that I would be able to. Work there. But then again, when I was there, Stanford was having these scandals with like Elizabeth Holmes, and Theranos, uh, and then recently it was the FTX, So these are all like, by the way, Stanford kids, like my interest was like using AI, like use to go to New York to work a finance job, but I ended up working like starting my own hedge fund anyway, like and I did it while I was in LA, Uh, so and being a hedge fund, it's like you're a high frequency trader, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's like that is basically the so what is a frequency? High frequency for me is like all these musics and all these artists that I'm listening to, So for instance, in America, country music sells really, really well. So Zach Bryan, for instance, is like some guy who's a U.S. Army veteran, who is massive, then for me, I'm an introvert. I came from like the computer music, analog, like Kraftwerk, uh, you know, what's it called? Like Fortet, Glitch Mob, all of those things. Yeah, so I mean, I came from like that background, like the electronic music background, digitalism, all of those things, uh, I like that a lot more, so yeah, that's something I have always perpetuated because I found that music to be much more inclusive, whereas like country was like much the most white people, uh, but the thing is, when you come up in this Bay Area scene, it's like a lot of Asian people because that's like Asian people are doing work in tech mostly, and I came from the tech brother, tech background. I always like for me these headphones are like the biggest uh things, because like I really like how uh the music. I mean, I love feeling the texture of music, the sound of music. There is this incredible movie, incredible. I loved it. Uh, so yeah, I mean, I've always been a person who's like incredibly um, into sharing music with other people because I hope that it helps other people cope with depression because something that I have struggled with, especially having had to deal with so much on my own with like no family support, real family support, and then insane family expectations that I still managed, uh,
So
yeah. So
it's not that only a success path you have taken. There's were a lots of challenges what you have faced on your own there.
yeah, I mean, like, what have I not faced? I have faced homelessness. I have faced food insecurity. I've faced every bit of the full journey of. It's like, dude, I don't know of any persons in wheelchairs that live past the age of 21, 28. I mean, they're usually like paid for, get government support or something. Like I don't get any government. I never got any government support from in America, really. I was always paying for the insurance and everything pretty much myself, except like when I was doing COVID. That's like during COVID because my like income was low. That was like for a few months I was on Medicaid, but since then I have been paying for private health insurance, on my own.
Great to know this. And how would you describe the education process at Stanford? What flexibility they provide? What are the plus points you see there?
So again, I'm going to speak as from a perspective of being an undergrad. So basically, kind of undergrad, when you join, you're not required to declare a major until your sophomore year. So the first year, you can study pretty much whatever you want. Like, so I took like uh, thinking matter. I mean, I took like lots of humanities stuff. I took like a film class. Like I was telling you, I made a documentary my sophomore year. But I that was what my creative passions like. But I came from like such a lower middle class background that like uh, I didn't have the flexibility to grow into a creative field. You know what I mean? And like to this day, I mean, if I could be the Indian Danny Boyle, that would be my life's greatest uh, uh, like dream. I wanna because I always love to like show people's culture, how they what they eat. I mean, like for me, I love eating sushi. I love eating different kinds of meat. I love eating different kinds of fish. You know, I love eating different steaks. Like yeah, just like sitting with people. Having a beer, learning their stories. So my first year, I mean, even though I was kicked out, I kind of like focused on this humanities background. And by the way, Stanford is like a BA, economics is a BA degree, but it still counts as STEM, because of the amount of math and hard sciences that you take, that it counts as STEM, so yeah, so for the first 2 years, you don't have, you're pretty much flexibility to do whatever you want, and then after the 2 year period becomes like more difficult. You have to pick a track. So and then based on that major, so for instance, I'll tell you something. Within the economics major, I myself uh, took within the economics major, I myself took like maybe 3 or 4 classes that had like what's it called I had to write papers. So I basically took more classes where I had to write exams, or I had to do solve graphs, or something like that.
Great and
Yeah, I
nice.
mean, yeah. I mean, I wasn't a fan of writing papers. I was a fan of writing like things that were real, things that actually were true. Like I had more of a creative soul, but I can end up getting a bit long-winded because there's always like, man, being in a wheelchair. Can you imagine how difficult it is to like manage homelessness while managing food insecurity, while managing uh,
That's
a fund.
unimaginable so far. Means it's really
Yeah,
challenging. It's really challenging.
yeah,
There is no doubt onto that. And
yeah,
afterwards, if I just go ahead, you started your own hedge fund. That's what
yeah.
we had a discussion
After
about.
yeah, after an extremely sour experience working for a startup where like it was just like these people are like not the kind of people I want to be around because they do not represent my value system. Because at the end of the day, man, as you get older, you, life's not all about partying. Life's not all about like just this. Like it's like you want to be close to people who you share some values with. I mean, again, that doesn't change the fact that I'm somebody who like will try any sort of meat. I would love to eat bats, like I'll just say, like if it is a delicacy somewhere, I would love to try it, and I would love to break bread. I love observing people's traditions, uh, like for instance, like Jamaicans, Caribbean culture has like Caribbeans are big on goat curry, Caribbeans and like that to me is mutton, but mutton in America is like lamb, so like for like it's like that it's like one of those things, like these are cultural differences that I didn't know about, but again I learned about by observing people and by hanging out with people, but I was mistreated so many times. I mean, Stanford is like one of the most privileged like schools. Like I personally knew like around 20-30 billionaires, uh, and to navigate that world, especially because I had this higher degree of visibility, uh, it was quite challenging. So after a certain point, I just dissociated away from Stanford, and I just kind of started focusing on my own lane as this guy who loved electronic music, and would rather share music with people than like be, part of this bad like environment, so I like kind of like after like they let me go, I did like the Uber Eats thing, and then after that I started my own fund where my partner again after a certain point I had to get a partner, just because it was really hard for me to manage everything on my own. But the partner was giving me such a shitty deal that after like last year, I mean, I had to cut him out of the business, so like now, especially with the advent of AI, it is quite fascinating to me where I'm going to be going next. But then I come back to India, right? I see exactly how it's is, and to me, it is exactly how I remember. It is not accessible at all. Uh, it is like, and then I have to fucking figure out, like, I mean, like, dude, I mean, in my peak years, I used to make like, I mean, my fund used to do over like 1 million in revenue. I mean, $800,000 worth of investment to get like 101.2 million. And then this guy, just because he's putting up the principal, he's like, okay, I have a kid to take care of. I mean, and then I'm paying for health insurance. I'm paying for everything on my own. Now he's not putting in any kind. He doesn't know any of the music. He doesn't know any of the what's actually gonna sell. Uh, so yeah, I mean, for a two-man shop, I was doing 75% of the work while he was like taking over 50% of the money, and got to the point where, hey, this is not a tenable situation, and like, look, man, I want to be in a position where I'm able to take care of my family. So at this point, I'm like, I came back to India. I'm trying to figure out how can I be part of the military, how can I be part of creating a sense of culture the same way I would have hoped to create, uh, in America. I mean, I'm in a period of transition in my life. I don't know where it's gonna go,
So
but
actually, life is quite uncertain, and always there are
yeah,
challenges to figure out certain new things at some points of time. But
yeah,
your
like,
journey is
I mean,
really one of the inspiring ones. Despite having so many challenges from the childhood, you made it to where many people dream of. So that's one of the greatest things.
exactly.
Also, you have just talked about that hit and run case at the beginning, and
Mhm.
post that a little bit of mental health issues that you went ahead for. So how you
Yeah,
been post that? So that's what I would also like to talk about.
man, it's hard. It's like I have good days and I have bad days. Like, for me, like, I've always suspected that. I mean, I have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Like, I mean, especially being in a wheelchair. You know, that is like, being in a wheelchair. I have strategies, of like how I'm toilet trained. How I am to. There is like a different method for different scenario. Uh, so, I mean, to for me, managing this OCD that I've always had from the beginning of my life, and then everybody has ADHD after a point, like you cannot focus with like if people being bombarded by information from every front, you cannot be like so instance like I'll show you. I have this glasses that are like these have like the Ray-Ban Metas, so you see how they have like cameras here, right? So I can take a picture with it, I can take film with it, so like especially after having gone through like a hit and run, I like now I'm like cautious, like if something happens, I can immediately take a picture with my technology, and then that way I know for fact that things will be okay, if I am alive. I mean, I will at least have the person's uh, uh, license plate or something, that I mean, I know who to sue or how to like, be aware,
So yes, after this is quite a bit a big event. Cost would have costed life. I feel cautiousness is a measure I feel that you are taking for yourself.
100%, man. I mean, especially being somebody, it is really difficult. Like situational awareness. Is not something. I mean, dude, I have. It's like Spider-Man and Iron Man. Like you know what I'm saying. Like Spider-Man has eight senses. So I mean, five plus three. But where like I can't really feel my legs. I can't really. I mean, so the accident happened. My leg got pinned down. Right. I lost so much blood that I had to be getting like 4 bags of blood. Uh, and because I mean, by the way, the person who hit me, she lied about the fact that she hit me. Hanako Tanaka was her name, and she literally lied about the fact that she said she didn't see me. She literally like, claimed, I mean, that's like why I'm a little bit again. You shouldn't say this, but an Asian lady driving and then hits you from the front, that fits all the stereotypes you've ever heard about. And to add to the fact, her height was 4'11". You know, her height was 4'11", and yeah, she hit me from like direct from the front. Um,
So last thing I would just like to ask you that people who are trying to be at the Ivy League, Princeton, Harvard, Stanford, anyone, let that be. What are the
mhm.
suggestions for you for them, as well as
Well,
in general advice to any public? What you are gonna give?
so it's very interesting to me. Okay, first things first, understand the real motivation behind why you want to go there, right?
Yeah.
Is it because like you think you're gonna be exposed to more opportunities? That's true. That will be definitely be true. But very importantly, you have to make sure that you don't really get sidetracked, and you have to be focused on the mission. You know, and somebody like me, I even though I had like a non-linear path, I was always focused on the mission, which is like to make the world a more equitable place, for disabled people. I mean, I've always been advocating for disabled people since I was born, because I was born with this disability, right? How to survive, right? Uh, and so the advice I would have is like you gotta write, you have like write, get focused on the story of why you want to go there. What are you trying to achieve? So you have to have like really good writing skills. You have to prepare for. I mean, again, so there is a difference. So when I remember the SAT used to have 2,400 points, but when I right now it's like 1,600 points or something. ACD is still 36. ACD I found to be much more manageable, because of the fact that it was more logic based, whereas the SAT, when I was studying, again, I haven't looked at the material. Uh, uh, SAT, when I was studying for it, had like loads of like crazy synonyms and stuff, and I right now it doesn't. I don't believe that section is still there, because I felt like that's test. It's a standardized test. So it filters out where you are going to be trying to go. So I um, uh, like you have to get focused on the story. I would love to, like, if kids in India are like trying to apply there, I would love to read their essays, and I'd love to give advice. And because, like, I'm very honest about what you, and as somebody who wrote like really good essays, and those were like probably much more the reason I was accepted than like the fact behind why um, I mean, yeah, my essays were really strong after a certain point, but I only had like 5 months to prepare, and I was doing that on top of like JE preparations, So I mean, my AIEEE rank, I believe, was like around. I mean, after I had gotten in, I didn't really care, So I ended up like scoring like I think it was like 8,000 rank, around all India rank around 8,000, 9,000, which like I just threw in the towel at that point. My dad was like, "You are not gonna go," and I said, "No, no, no, I'm gonna go. I have scholarship here." I don't agree with how you have like kept me in leashes my whole life, and I cannot live like this. I'm because in India, if I have to live like this, I'll probably kill myself. Because like that was like, I mean, dude, what is the number of cause of like people here? It's suicide, right? It's a fact, right? I got the freedom. I utilized it in the right way. You know, uh,
So yeah, nice
But
to explore all these things. And
yeah,
thanks a lot, Saptarshi, to come to my channel and share your
oh, dude,
experiences.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. Again, it was really, really good, like
So
being
would
in
like to
touch with
catch up
you.
with you again with some other story, with some other experiences
Yeah,
going forward. Thanks, Saptarshi. And if all of
yeah.
you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Bye.
But take care, guys.
Yeah.